SLT Fibre and experience the power of fibre technology. Sri Lanka's only super fast internet connection. SLT Fibre. Call 1212 now.
Tonight, knockout. The election manifesto of Gotabaya Rajapaksa unveiled. Distortion of facts. President's Council's critical of tactical misinterpretation of particulars in the dismissed court case against Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Now they are trying to make use of this case, misinterpreting the law.
They've willfully suppressed this matter.
Through foreign eyes, an Australian security expert sees the value in Mattala Airport, which was used for paddy storage.
Visit of an Australian P-8 maritime surveillance aircraft to Hambantota Airport was really a great example of how the two countries can work together. Hambantota Airport is really a world-class facility.
All these stories and much more coming your way on First at 9 this Friday, the 25th of October 2019.
Fair and Lovely men ගෑවට පස්සේ මාක්ස් අඩු වෙලා ෆෑනස් වැඩි වෙලා.
මාක්ස් අඩු කරලා ඔයාගේ ෆෑනස් ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක වැඩි කරගන්න. Fair and Lovely men anti-marks cream.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to First at 9 on AdaDerana 24, Sri Lanka's news channel. I am Katharina Chang. Presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Gotabaya Rajapaksa today pledged to create a prosperous Sri Lanka free of corruption while ensuring sovereignty in a unitary Sri Lanka. The former Defence Secretary's manifesto included a multitude of pledges and proposals, all geared towards alleviating burden on people. To that end, the presidential hopeful proposed a variety of tax cuts, including the reduction of VAT to 8%.
The manifesto of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna's presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa was ceremoniously unveiled in Colombo this morning. The event saw the participation of diplomats and politicians. The ceremony was also graced by the Mahasangha, professionals who contributed to the manifesto, opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa, as well as presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa himself. Titled The 10 Principles of Inclusive Governance, the manifesto lays out a 5-year plan under a government led by former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa. It gives foremost place to national security while outlining its stance of a non-aligned and a friendly foreign policy, constitutional reforms that is responsible for the people, developing a people-centric economy, creating a technology-driven society as well as establishing law-abiding and wholesome citizens. The presidential hopeful presented the first copy of the manifesto to members of the Mahasangha. Gotabaya Rajapaksa later presented the manifesto to leader of the party and opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa.
Through our policies, we have presented a system which will protect the country's sovereignty while ensuring our local essence, along with a commitment towards the welfare of all. Our policies also place a considerable amount of faith on the youth. Sri Lanka is a unitary country. We will not allow it to be divided and certainly will not allow any foreign forces to unnecessarily interfere in the country's affairs. We treat national security as a fundamental responsibility of the government, so we will strengthen the national security mechanisms to ensure the country's security. We will always ensure rule of law. A country should only have one law which treats everybody equally, irrespective of their status. That's what we intend to do. In the near future, we will introduce a relief package to reduce the daily cost of living of the people. We will invest in every student who passed the advanced level exam to pursue a degree. We will definitely change the current Income Tax Act, and we hope to reduce the heavy tax burden currently placed on the people. We hope to reduce the high income tax charge from manufacturing companies. Economic service charges and withholding taxes too will be reduced, and we will reduce the VAT to 8%. We will remove taxes imposed on religious places and also will introduce a simple tax system for vehicles. In addition, we will also remove the payee tax imposed on salaries of the both state and private sector employees. We also plan to develop the tourism industry to the tune it will bring $10 billion per annum. We hope to generate over 1 million job opportunities within the next 5 years. Under our government, we will give fertilizer free of charge and we hope to encourage the use of organic fertilizer. We will also ban the re-export of agricultural products. We will write off loans obtained by farmers who are inflicted with hardship. We will ensure the payment of a daily wage of 1,000 rupees to workers of the estate sector. You don't have to fear any more of your children falling victim to drugs, as we promise to stop the drug menace. Under a government of ours, there is no room for corruption. These are not mere political promises. Just as I have fulfilled all my responsibilities to the fullest in the past, I shall do so in the future as well. I will create a country where people would not want to leave it, but instead, people who have left would want to return.
මිනිසුන් හැර යන රටක් වෙනුවට ගිය අය ආපසු එන සෞභාග්‍යමත් දේශයක් අපි ගොඩනගමු.
The manifesto pledges to establish an independent commission to bring to book all those responsible for the Easter Sunday attack and make public its findings. The presidential hopeful also pledged to provide monthly allowances to all children who lost their parents in the attacks. It goes on to note that steps will be taken to release all security officials kept in remand custody under false allegations. Its presidential hopeful also promised to resolve issues relating to pensions, benefits and promotions of the Triforces, Police and Civil Security Department. It also proposes to provide a monthly allowance to parents and wives of fully handicapped war heroes, equivalent to the amount of his or her last pay after their demise. Furthermore, it moves to appoint a parliamentary select committee to make constitutional amendments with regard to the executive presidency, the mixed electoral system, provincial council system, and uphold rule of law. Also amongst the proposals is the rehabilitation of army soldiers who are being punished due to their actions during the war and former LTTE members. Filing cases or ensure the release of those arrested over the war crime allegations within 3 months is also among them. With regards to education, the presidential candidate pledges to ensure all teachers are made graduates, convert the 18 science faculties across the country into separate universities, as well as get rid of salary anomalies of all teachers. Establishment of a sports university which is on par with international standards is also a pledge. The presidential candidate also promised to address all salary anomalies of government employees and provide a salary that is able to match their standard of living. Furthermore, pledged to provide housing to every family by initiating apartment complex projects too is included in the manifesto. It has also been proposed to reduce telephone and internet tax by 50%, as well as to put a stop to the current fuel price revision. It is also worthy to note that the manifesto pledges to renegotiate the Hambantota Port Agreement by holding high-level meetings with the Chinese government as soon as possible. Furthermore, the manifesto also touches on the establishment of a centre to provide international technical services at the Hambantota Port and Mattala Airport, as well as creating 9 economic corridors centering the Trincomalee and Hambantota harbours. SLPP presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa presented the manifesto to the youth through the launch of the mobile application Vision GR. He later presented the manifesto to professionals, diplomats and politicians present at the event. Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa later addressed the gathering. When we said we will sweep out terrorism, they asked us as to with which broom. We have done things which were said to be impossible. We could do those because of the bond we had with the public. People have no doubts on the policies of our presidential candidate. We say what we do and we do what we say. We have no secret agreements. We will never deceive any ethnicity. Within our policies, there are no third-party conditions. Now we are having to start everything from the beginning. We promise to create a country free from fear of death. We have selected a presidential candidate who is capable of doing all these things. We have also stated in our manifesto that we consider the election result as a public referendum for a general election to be held soon after the presidential election.
ඔබ සියලු දෙනාටම ජය වේවා.
Presidential candidate of the New Democratic Front, Sajith Premadasa, pledges to end the issuance of duty-free vehicle permits for parliamentarians, saying the money saved from the move will be put to better use. With that, let's see what else was said on Minister Premadasa's campaign trail.
Another election rally of the presidential candidate of New Democratic Front, Sajith Premadasa, was held yesterday in Akmi Mana.
The SLPP presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa spoke about their economic policy. He said that he will operate all state institutions in a way that they will not become a burden on the Treasury. According to the Treasury, they pay 26 billion rupees to make up for losses at state institutions. What will happen if the Treasury stops that payment? Currently, 230,000 people work in these corporations. If the Treasury stops payment of this 26 billion rupees, 100,000 people will lose their jobs. Our opponents are saying that they are against capital punishment. I would like to ask them whether they want to keep those involved in terrorism in prisons forever, further spreading extremism and terrorism, or whether they want to punish them by giving the death penalty. We will not be hesitant in giving capital punishment to people who are involved in terrorism and drug peddling. Afterwards, Minister Sajith Premadasa participated in a rally held at the public grounds in Dikwalla of Matara. We should not govern the country, but serve it. We should not do politics, but we should serve the nation. You all know that every 5 years, members of parliament are given duty-free permits to import vehicles. I promise to stop this process and save money to better serve the people of our country.
The JVP is disappointed that the final report on the Easter Sunday attacks compiled by the Parliamentary Select Committee has omitted the government as a culpable entity. Addressing a media briefing today, MP Herath was critical of the failure to hold the government accountable over the attacks, saying holding several individuals responsible simply will not do. In the meantime, JVP's leader MP Kumar Disanayake, who has designs of becoming Sri Lanka's top citizen, also pledged to make the country conflict-free, adding that his two main adversaries in the presidential race are good friends behind the scenes.
Another campaign rally in support of National People's Front presidential candidate Kumar Disanayake was worked off last evening in the town of Akkarepattu.
We need to develop the country to the point that religious freedom is ensured. We will ensure that all ethnic groups can live in harmony, free of conflict. What politicians have to do is not keep heralding that they developed education and economy. Sinhalese leaders spread racism in Sinhalese areas. Muslim leaders too spread racism among their own community. Rauf Hakim talks about an attack on a mosque in Dambulla as well as in Darga town. All these leaders do the same thing, but they are together in the cabinet. Are there leaders who say what I said is true? They say Sajith had to be given support to stop Gotabaya. I challenge Sajith Premadasa to show any parliament hands-out record where Gotabaya was criticised. He doesn't even utter the name of his in relation to the election campaign, let alone say it in parliament. Have you ever heard Sajith say the name Gotabaya? He refers to him as the candidate of the opposing party because they're so close.
In the meantime, a media briefing was organised by the JVP at their party headquarters in Pelavatta this morning.
We're going to launch the nation-building policy of our presidential candidate tomorrow at the Foundation Institute in Colombo. The Parliamentary Select Committee probed the Easter attacks over the recent times. So the President, the Prime Minister, the Defence Secretary, Inspector General of Police and military intelligence units as well as officials are identified as the culpable for the attacks. Isn't this the government? But nowhere does the report mention that the government is responsible for this and it's a severe shortcoming. The entire government should be made accountable over this without just making several individuals culpable.
Let's now go into a short commercial break. Stay tuned. Senior Research Fellow with the National Security College of the Australian National University, Dr. David Brewster, highlights that developing Sri Lanka's maritime domain awareness is in the interest of Australia, which in turn aids Sri Lanka survive the adverse effects of strategic competition among major powers. Delivering the keynote at the Air Symposium 2019 held recently, Dr. Brewster proceeded to say that Australia is willing to share its experience and know-how with Sri Lanka in order to achieve an enhanced maritime domain awareness system in a cost-effective and efficient manner.
We're seeing significantly increased strategic competition among major powers right across the Indo-Pacific, including in the Indian Ocean. Indeed, the possible strategic futures of the Indian Ocean are likely to be even more complex than those in the Pacific. After several decades of US military predominance, the Indian Ocean is now becoming a much more contested strategic space. Indeed, there's a real risk that the India-China dynamic will descend into even greater strategic competition, particularly involving a jostling influence among the smaller or developing states in the region. In fact, we should expect these smaller or developing states to become the battlegrounds for influence in the future. A significant reduction in the US commitment in the Persian Gulf could easily create a power vacuum that others will race to fill. And this could potentially be extremely damaging for the stability of our region. Several Indian Ocean states are already suffering the adverse effects of strategic competition among major powers. But it certainly does give significant reasons for countries such as Sri Lanka and Australia to form close relationships and to work together wherever we can. And our interests most clearly intersect in the maritime domain. We face a range of maritime security threats. Now, as a small air force, the Sri Lankan Air Force will have no choice but to work closely with the Sri Lankan Navy and other relevant government agencies in order to achieve this. I believe that the best contribution that Australia can make is sharing our experience and know-how through training, through swaps of experts in finding ways to enhance Sri Lanka's maritime domain awareness in a cost-effective and efficient way. The visit of an Australian P-8 maritime surveillance aircraft to Hambantota Airport earlier this year was really a great example of how the two countries can work together. Hambantota Airport, which I visited, is really a world-class facility. It is absolutely in Australia's interests that Sri Lanka develop its maritime domain awareness in this part of the world.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe believes funds and facilities currently allocated to the field of medical research is insufficient and calls for the establishment of 2 research centres in Kandy and Colombo. The government currently spends 2 billion rupees annually in medicinal research. Speaking at the National Health Research Symposium in Colombo, the Prime Minister also highlighted the need to ensure accessibility of health services to all and mooted a national health insurance scheme as a possible answer.
National Health Research Symposium 2019 kicked off in Colombo recently with the auspices of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe under the theme Transforming Primary Healthcare by Generating Evidence, Best Practices and Innovations. The 2-day event is organised by Education, Training and Research Unit of the Ministry of Health, Nutrition and Indigenous Medicine.
We should have more and more centres for research. But in our own system, except for the department, as far as the medical schools were concerned, the medical schools didn't actually award postgraduate degrees earlier as people went abroad. And then we've got the Institute of Postgraduate Medicine. But it means it's an examining body. England or in India or anywhere else, a medical school which gives postgraduate has its own research facilities. Now this, I feel, is a big defect. And at least 2 of our faculties, Colombo and Peradeniya, the 2 oldest, must have research facilities in them. If the postgraduate awards are tied up to research, then you will see qualitative difference coming up in research. And build up also human resources for research. Once you get the base organized, then you will see more results. But also it means for us, from the 2 billion that we are giving for research, the government will have to go up to about 5 billion. That is necessary. But to give 5 billion, without changing the structure, I feel, will not get you the best results. It won't get you the value for money. So you have to change the base and have more research institutions as you go along. Also, we should encourage the pharmaceutical companies to spend more on research and reward them where they are successful in that field. We have a public sector and a private sector. And how do we make these health services available to all? So as a government, our next step has to be to build in a national health insurance scheme where everyone participates, which will then enable you to get services. That itself will help the research function. More people come in and they'll be coming in for these type of new diseases because you could identify what you come in for.
And we go into a short commercial break. Stay tuned. A team of President's counsels expressed their alarm over the misrepresentation of law and mistranslation of the motion by certain parties of the lawsuit filed against presidential hopeful and former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa by Ahimsa Vikramatunga in the United States recently. On the 15th of July this year, Ahimsa Vikramatunga lodged the case against the presidential hopeful, alleging that he is responsible for extrajudicial killings, crimes against humanity and torture. The case was, however, dismissed recently, with the US court saying it failed to find merit in the allegations.
A media briefing consisting of President's counsels with regard to the lawsuit filed against presidential hopeful and former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa by Ahimsa Vikramatunga, the daughter of late journalist Lasantha Vikramatunga, was held in Colombo yesterday. The court case was filed in the United States, claiming that the former Defence Secretary is responsible for extrajudicial killing, crimes against humanity and torture. However, it was later dismissed, along with all the claims.
As the President's counsels are quite concerned and are rather perturbed that an election that should be fought in a democratic society, in a democratic manner, tried to be completely subverted by bringing various issues to leave out the candidature of Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. There has been an attempt throughout, from the beginning, to prevent him from contesting this election. As a matter of fact, I'm glad that two gentlemen went to courts on an alleged public interest matter, which was held to be had no public interest, but the only interest and the motivation was Court of Appeal held that there was absolutely no public interest, but it was just to prevent him from participating in the political activity, and also that there is an essence of mala fide in filing that action, and that action was dismissed. So among these series of attempts was this attempt by Ahimsa Vikramatunga, the late Lasantha Vikramatunga's daughter. She brought this action in California after a lapse of 10 years close to these general elections. There too, she made it to mention that he was the Secretary of Defense at the time, and to attach responsibility to some actions which had taken place in the killing of Lasantha. Now, I must say the lawyers of Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa did not even have to, it was found it necessary to file an answer. It was dismissed purely on a preliminary technical objection, on the basis that there's absolutely no jurisdiction. There was no need to file an answer. So there was no allegations made. You can't go on speculative basis. You have to come with substantial evidence. We have no hesitation to say that we are in full sympathy with Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and we extend our support to him. And we feel, for the sake of the country and for the development of the country, that he is the better suited person. Now they are trying to make use of this case, misinterpreting the law, completely misusing an order, judgment, and number two, mistranslating it. I'm very sorry that the total singular translation did violence to the English version of the judgment. So it's very regretful. I mean, let's fight a clean election. That's democracy, and let's fight in that spirit.
The motion was dated the 16th of August 2019. And the motion, it was Mr. Rajapaksa's lawyers categorically prefaced the motion by stating thus, if I may quote from that motion, page 9 of the 32-page motion. As many Sri Lankan citizens are following this case, Mr. Rajapaksa wishes to make it clear that assuming the truth of the allegations for the purposes of this motion in no way concedes their truth. On the contrary, Mr. Rajapaksa vigorously disputes the allegation. So Mr. Rajapaksa's motion is prefaced by stating that illegal inadequacy or the object to jurisdiction is taken up, and Mr. Rajapaksa is not conceding to any of the matters or does not accept any of the truth of any of the matters set out in the complaint of Ms. Wickramatunge, and yet he is vigorously disputing these allegations. However, for reasons best known to the persons who misinterpreted this case to the media, they willfully suppress this matter from the media.
This is a civil case, it's not a criminal case which had been filed. I'll give you a simple example where you all will understand. Now, in California, American citizen is assassinated. Then his son or daughter comes to Sri Lanka and files a civil case against the Defense Secretary of the United States. Will that be accepted in Sri Lanka? This case which had been filed after 10 years. 10 years for damages. In Sri Lanka, you can't file cases after 10 years for damages under any circumstances. So, the case had been dismissed in limine, that is, without going into the facts of the case, on a technical ground where the American court did not have jurisdiction, it had been dismissed. The people who held a press conference yesterday or day before yesterday in public media distorted the judgment entirely. There's nothing in this judgment to say that Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa was ever involved or he had anything to do with this. It had been dismissed in limine. They say that they can't go into what happened in Sri Lanka because complainant in this case does not say that Mr. Rajapaksa is responsible. In a statement, she said, because he was the Secretary of Defense, he should be responsible. But the American government, California court, had entirely dismissed. This is done with the consent of the UNP government, where an innocent girl who lost her father 10 years back, we are all sad about it. Everyone is sad when someone is assassinated, everyone is sad. That had been used to file this case, and ultimately it got dismissed.
ඡන්දදායකයන් නොමග යවන්න කරනු ලබන අසත්‍ය ප්‍රචාර පිළිබඳව සත්‍ය කියලා දෙන්න. ඒක නීතිඥයෝ හැටියටත්
It is the responsibility of ours as responsible citizens and as lawyers to tell the truth about attempts to lead voters astray. Some of those comments are made by lawyers and politicians. We should give a chance for the people to decide whether he can be president or not. They have the right to criticize him, but they don't have the right to lead people astray with fabrications. Either these lawyers who interpreted this were angry or they had Sinhala and English language issues.
මේක අර්ථ නිරූපණය කරපු නීතිඥවරුන්ට එක්කෝ දැඩි ද්වේෂයක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් සිංහල ඉංග්‍රීසි භාෂාව පිළිබඳ දැනුමේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ.
And that's all for tonight. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.